Hello again, and welcome to another astrology video. In this video, I would like to talk about Mars through the Earth signs. I have started with a previous video about some weeks ago about Mars through the fire signs, and in that first video, in case you are interested, you can also find out about Mars's definition in general and what it represents, what it stands for in a person's chart. So in this particular video, I'm just going to go straight into my interpretation of Mars through the Earth signs. So the first Earth sign, and also the most typical, is Taurus. And the reason I say it's the most typical, at least in my view, is because Taurus is a fixed sign and it's also an earth sign. And in general, the earth energy, when you think about it, is a very fixed kind of energy. It represents stability and caution and patience and just anything that you would normally associate with the earth element. And Taurus, being fixed earth, is like the quintessential, the very basic, most primal kind of earth energy. So it's like unrefined, pure earth energy. So what does Mars in Taurus mean? Mars represents, of course, your drive. Like I said in the previous video, it represents your drive in life, your ambitions, the way that you seek to assert yourself in this life and in society in general. Of course, it also depends on things like house position and aspects to other signs and aspects to the ascendant, but in just the description of Mars in Taurus Mars's sign can actually tell you the basic expression of energy of that Mars placement. So Mars in Taurus people, first of all, probably a lot of people will tell you that they can be very stubborn. Unless they have like a lot of mutable signs elsewhere in their chart, like if they have like Sun in Gemini or Moon in Sagittarius, or if they have a lot of mutability or a lot of cardinal signs, then maybe they will not be as stubborn. But Mars in Taurus, in general, just makes for a very stubborn person. Not just like, because Taurus is all about the need for security. And in their particular case, because there are other signs that also seek security, but in their particular case, security is brought by material possession and routine activities. So these people really love to have kind of a daily routine. They're the kind of people that do well in their lives when they have a 9-to-5 job maybe, or not necessarily like a 9-to-5 job, but they just stick to a certain routine every single day. Like, you know, even if they're, let's say, self-employed, let's say they're a writer, they will stick to their own routine and they'll have like their own little habits every day that help them stay grounded and focused. Like, let's say they start by, I don't know, doing yoga every day at 6:30 in the morning, and then they take their coffee with exactly 2 teaspoons of sugar and some cream, and then, I don't know, they eat the oatmeal with soy milk or whatever, you know, just as an example. So these people really love routine. Routine really grounds them. So on the plus side, they can be very stable, very rational, and very cautious, just like the pure energy of Taurus. You know, it's like, it's a very cautious energy, the pure energy of Earth, I mean. You know, it's very cautious kind of energy. They like planning, they like to be rational, but their main drive also, Taurus being ruled by Venus, which is the planet of pleasure, especially Taurus is a very hedonistic kind of energy. It's probably the most hedonistic energy in the zodiac. And people with Mars in Taurus, they can be really driven by pleasures in life. Even like everyday small pleasures, like good food, like good music, concerts, um, theater, whatever. Like they're very into artistic pursuits, but they also have like a very down to earth kind of approach. For example, Libra is the other sign that is governed by Venus, but Libra, being an air sign, is let's say, a more refined expression of the Venus energy. And so Libra will be more into things like literature and social causes and partnerships, and will be socially graceful because, being also an air sign, which deals with being rational and being sociable, being extroverted, Libra has a kind of social grace, but like Taurus can be very blunt, like especially the more, quote, primitive, unrefined kind of Tauruses. They can really be kind of like the quintessential, peasant sort of person. These people who can be, very narrow-minded. They fear change so much that they will not dare to get out of their comfort zone, even though they risk, losing a lot in life by sticking to their comfort zone. And like, basically, Mars in Taurus really seeks to acquire material possession. These people can really be driven by a desire to get rich. Taurus, like I said, they have a very strong desire for security, and through that, because of that strong desire for security, they have a very strong desire for acquiring wealth. This is how they feel safe. They feel like if they have a lot of money in the bank, or if they have a lot of stuff around them, property, they feel that they're good, they're safe, they can sleep well at night, and all those things. On the one hand, they will be driven to make money for security, and on the other hand, also because, of course, they want to experience as much of life's pleasures as they can, being very hedonistic. These people really will hate things like being on a diet or any kind of stoicism, unlike, let's say, Capricorn, which is a much more stoic sign. Capricorn is all about planning ahead, and it's about rationing your resources in order to reach a long-term goal. But Taurus is much more primitive. Taurus will be like the 5-year-old child that, deep down, they're like the 5-year-old child that throws a tantrum when you don't buy them the candy bar or something like that. Like, these people really do not care for higher goals, unless you have, like Mars conjunct Saturn, or aspecting Saturn, or aspected by Saturn, in which case they will tend to be more Capricornian in their pursuits, like they can be more focused on long-term goals and all these things. But generally, like Mars in Taurus, just any kind of restraint on their part will be seen as unnecessary, or just unnecessarily painful, like they don't care. Also, like, they can be just very sensual. This is a very sensual sign, not necessarily sexual. Like Mars in Scorpio can be sexual, but these people are sensual. Like, they just care about any kind of physical pleasure. So they like things, they like to take things slow and just savor anything to do with the five senses. They'll be the kind of people who will spend a lot of money on a cashmere sweater just because they like the way it feels on their skin. Or, they also are interested into old style things, like vintage things, again, because it kind of gives them that sense of security, being connected to, I don't know, history and the earth. Like, I personally have always felt like Taurus people are interested in jazz. I don't know why. Maybe this isn't true, or maybe this is just true for some people I know. But it's that kind of music, like blues, jazz, that is really close to the I think the soul of Taurus, like the general basic energy of Taurus. You know, that very kind of soulful, slow music. You know, that doesn't seem to care about the fact that modern life is having a faster pace. You know, like, and again, they can also be into collecting things. This is something that I've noticed with Taurus. Again, it goes back to that interest in having material possessions. Like quite a few of them I've noticed, not necessarily people who have Mars in Taurus, but Mars in Taurus as well. They can be interested in collecting things, or if not collecting, acquiring like antiques or old items or things like that, that bring them this sense of security, of being connected to history and the earth, and, you know, things that can bring them emotional security and stability, if that makes sense. Like, these will be the people who, you know, will collect vinyl records or something. They'll have, you know, or a stamp collection, or any kind of weird collection you can think about. They're also going to be interested in cooking. Mars in Taurus can take an active interest in cooking, so they may actually pursue this as some kind of a profession, or at least a hobby. They can also be good at music, because again, Taurus is governed by Venus, which is the planet of art and pleasure. And generally, Taurus people, whether it's Mars or other planets, they're said to have pleasant voices. Like, people just feel soothed by their voices, or if not soothed, they're just pleasant to the ear, you know. People enjoy listening to them. Whether it's singing or just plain talking, they can have a kind of melodious voice. Okay, so again, as far as relationships go, Mars in Taurus can be very stable, and unlike what you would first assume about them, they can actually be very romantic and very soft deep down, even though, like, Taurus, again, as I said before, they can come across as very robust and very kind of stubborn and kind of hard-shelled. When you think of a bull, you think of something that is not necessarily very soft and cuddly and all that, but Taurian people can be very dependable in relationships. They're slow in anything that they do. They are slow and deliberate and cautious, and they take things one thing at a time. They're generally not good at multitasking. These will not be the people who, you know, will feel very comfortable, let's say, having like 10 different projects going on at the same time, or having like very hectic lifestyles. Like, you know, they'll be working and going to school and raising 3 kids at the same time or something like that. That's not like the ideal scenario for them, because again, they really love stability and they like to be connected to their natural rhythm. And this is another big thing, right? So yeah, where was I? About relationships. They can be very loyal, very stable. They may not be like very exuberant in relationships, like unlike, let's say, Mars in Aries, or Mars in Leo, or Mars in Libra. Taurus will not necessarily, you know, be like super exciting and super writing you poetry, or they may write you poetry, but everything they do is kind of like slow and sensuous. So Taurus will be like the type of person that maybe will prepare a bubble bath for you, or like invite you for a romantic home-cooked meal, something like that, but nothing too like loud or flashy, or, you know, they're generally not the kind of people that you would meet in a very loud techno club or something like that. They're very old-fashioned. They're old-fashioned, especially in relationships, but they can be old-fashioned in general. Like the women with Mars in Taurus will like men who are old-fashioned, because again, as I said in a previous video, in my video about Mars in fire signs, Mars in a woman's chart can also represent the kind of man that she finds most appealing as a boyfriend or a lover, not necessarily as a husband. So yeah, basically women who have Mars in Taurus, they will like men who are like prototypical Taurians. They can, men who are just very slow and deliberate and who have pleasant voices and who work with their hands generally, like, because Taurus has, Taurus can govern all these professions that are just very traditional and very connected to the earth, like, or to natural substances in general. It's like carpentry, for example, is a typical Taurus occupation, or gardening, or pottery, or singing with your voice, or singing at an instrument, of course. But just anything that is like connected to like organic stuff, natural stuff, I don't know, tailoring, for example, can also be governed by Taurus. So yeah, like women who have like Mars here, they will like men who are patient and maybe a little bit shy and pleasure loving and maybe good cooks as well. So yeah, again, something that is noteworthy about Mars and Taurus is that they're very connected to nature. Taurus is like pretty much like reminds me of paganism, of Wicca and things like that. These like people that gather in the woods and pray to the sun and the moon and stuff like that. That's like very Taurus. Taurians really love nature. Also because they tend to be down to earth and maybe not very imaginative. They will just not think too far ahead. They will not be carried away too much about imagination and about things that they cannot perceive through the five senses. So you won't find them thinking too much about parallel universes or I don't know, time travel or stuff like that, because they stick to the tried and true, and they stick to Mother Earth. They love Earth, they love the natural rhythm of a person. They will be at their best when you go to bed like early before midnight and wake up in the morning and follow a nice routine. And when they get really worked up and really stressed, it really does them well if they get out in nature somewhere, if they can, in the forest, by a lake, by a river, or of course in a park if they can't get somewhere completely out in the nature. But generally, these people really feel more energized and more recharged when they simply go out somewhere in nature, even by themselves. Unlike, let's say, Gemini, which is a very social energy. Like, if you throw a Gemini out in the woods for 1 week, even with everything he or she needs from a material point of view, they will just go insane, because Gemini is all about communication and talking to other people. They'll always be like on the phone with somebody or stuff like that. They cannot live without socializing. But Taurus, on the other hand, they can really be solitary. Being an earth sign, they are introverted and feminine, quote unquote, in nature. Right, so that's about it about Taurus. About Virgo, Mars in Virgo. Virgo is the second earth sign, and it's a mutable sign, which means that unlike Taurus, Virgo can really be flexible. Unlike Taurus and unlike Capricorn, actually, because earth signs, earth energy in general, can be very fixed and stubborn, as I said. But in Virgo, they can be more open-minded, they can be more flexible, they like to explore more. However, being an earth sign, they're also very, very pragmatic. So let's say if you take Gemini, which is the other sign ruled by Mercury, Gemini can be very scattered. They are also, both Virgo and Gemini are very intellectually oriented, but Virgo has a much more pragmatic approach to knowledge. They will not necessarily care about the latest gossip, for example. They will not care so much about interpersonal relationships, unlike Gemini. Virgo will be more about what they can actually do concretely with information. So they'll be like, they'll be interested in things like, let's say, programming or science in general, or anything to do, anything scientific actually, and especially the medical field. Virgo in general is really connected with the medical field. So Mars in Virgo can be really driven to assert themselves in a Virgo way, which means that they will be, in order to assert themselves, they will be meticulous, they will be analytical, patient, intelligent, skillful. They're also notoriously perfectionist, and they will be the kind of people that, if you give them a task, they will not be satisfied until they feel they've done it perfectly, or they've done everything that they can and every detail is put into place. And because of their analytical minds, they really feel passionate, or they feel engaged when they have, let's say, a life or a profession that offers them intellectual challenges. So like a Virgo Mars will really generally not be happy in something like, let's say, a very bohemian lifestyle or very artistic lifestyle, or I don't know, something like managerial positions. They're generally not good at that, because they're very attentive to detail, and this can be both a quality and a setback, of course. Because they are so attentive to detail and very logical, they do very well in professions where their attention is an asset. So things like accounting or chemistry or genetics, any kind of research can be good for Virgo. Even though Virgo may not necessarily be like, Scorpio, like really intense about digging deep and, not leaving any stone unturned or something. But Virgo, when you give them a task, if you tell them, I don't know, look for a cure for cancer or something, they will just put all of their sharpness of mind into it. And they can be very good. They can be just as good as like Scorpio when it comes to things like research, because they're just very brainy and very logical. They can have this really cold, piercing sort of logic. They are generally interested in anything to do with health. So they can be anything from like nutritionist to gynecologist, any form of like medical field, to genetics, or they can be nutritionists without necessarily having dietitians. They can be dietitians without necessarily having gone through medical school. But even if these people are not necessarily into the medical school, or they don't necessarily have a degree in medicine, they will still be interested in things like healthy eating, staying fit, especially staying fit because, Mars represents the physical body. And so Mars and Virgo, they can be very picky about what they eat. They can be the kind of people who are always into the latest diet. They're always trying some diet that will promise them physical perfection or something. Also, the same thing with exercise. They can be obsessed with exercise, trying different kinds of exercise. until they feel like they've reached the level of perfection that they want to reach. Okay. Also, in relationships. Now, I know that traditionally people, when they say Virgo, they think virgin. But actually there's like an entire debate about that, and it turns out that that is actually not true. Like, first of all, virgin in its original sense and the way that it's understood in the zodiac is simply unwed woman, basically. So basically it means single, not necessarily a virgin in the physical sense, but what it means is unmarried, unattached. And this is no coincidence because Virgo is the last of the quote personal signs. So the personal signs are from Aries to Virgo, Libra being the first of the somewhat called collective signs, because Libra represents partnership. Libra represents the part of a person's evolution where they get married or they enter a long-term partnership. And so in Libra, life is no longer about just yourself. But Virgo, being just before Libra, basically rules the highest level of self-perfection that you can reach. And this is why these people will always be interested in perfecting themselves in one way or another. Usually it's by acquiring as many skills as possible. But it can also be like, you know, obsessed about their physical appearance. It could be anything, actually. It depends on the placement of Virgo in your chart, and in this particular case, it depends on the placement of Mars in Virgo in your chart, depending on your ascendant. So, yes. As far as relationships go, Virgo can be very critical and very selective, of course, as you would expect, simply because these people actually do not necessarily covet a relationship. They're always so focused on self-perfecting, on progress, on acquiring a new skill or acquiring knowledge, that they don't necessarily care so much about relationships. Doesn't mean that they cannot be romantic, but they will never be like romantic in the way that Pisces is romantic, which is the opposite sign of Virgo. Virgos will always be kind of brainy and analytical, and they can very easily spot other people's shortcomings. So they can be very easily critical and can be easily offend other people. So they're better off finding someone who can just tolerate them and understand the fact that they are naturally critical and they cannot help it. So try not to go for people who are hypersensitive, I guess. So that's as far as relationships go. Something else I can say about relationships, again, women with Mars in Virgo will be attracted to Virgo type of men. They can be attracted to men who are very analytical. Also, alongside analytical, Virgo Mars people are very perfectionist, not just perfectionist, but orderly. They can be like OCD kind of orderly. They need everything to be neat and tidy and organized, and they love to organize things. These people very likely will have like their drawers in order. They'll have all their socks in order. They'll be like carefully folding their clothes to perfection. They cannot stand, anything not in order, basically. So, yeah. This is as far as I can say about Mars and Virgo. Of course, it all depends on other aspects in the chart. It depends on Mars and Virgo through the houses, which I may get into at some point. It depends on, of course, aspects. Aspects make a great difference. but this is just the general feeling of Mars in Virgo. Okay, so Mars in Capricorn. Capricorn is the last and most, let's say, evolved earth sign, because it's generally the last sign of an element, is like the most refined, quote unquote, expression of that element. So in Capricorn you have the, like, let's say, the distilled earth energy. You have the desire for planning, the desire for caution, for reason, for pragmatism taken to the extreme. Also, Capricorn represents the sign of social status, of material ambition, because Capricorn people in general who have a lot of planets in Capricorn or a strong Saturn, their main goal in life is to achieve, to reach a position of power, of social status. Not necessarily power like in a financial sense, that's actually Scorpio, but really what they care for is social status. It's, having other people look up to them, knowing that they've made it, knowing that they have other people's respect, that they have a certain position in society and all that. And so any planet in Capricorn takes on a little bit of that energy, and depending on the planet, of course, it can be expressed in different ways and in different areas of a person's life. With Mars is actually exalted in Capricorn. Now, for people who don't know what that is, I could say Google it, but exalted basically means where a planet is really it's like in turbo speed, like it's really very expressive. It expresses itself very strongly. So Mars and Capricorn people are super ambitious. I've actually known a few people with Mars and Capricorn, and they're really ambitious. Like these are the people who from a very young age will know where they want to get in life. They will generally have some kind of a life's goal that they're always pursuing. And also what is of course typical for Capricorn, because every Mars position represents pursuing your goals. However, Capricorns are probably the most likely at achieving their goals simply because they are not afraid of hard work, number one. And number two, they're always planning ahead. They're always reevaluating, planning, taking in the reality of their situation, recalculating their position. So nothing is left to chance for them. They're not like, let's say, Mars in Aries, who may be very, very energetic and very ambitious, but because it's Aries, they can be very impatient and impulsive, and even though they want something very badly and they have a lot of energy and a lot of ambition, they can sometimes set themselves back by making rash decisions, which is something that doesn't happen with Capricorn. Capricorn really plans everything in detail. These will be the people who, let's say, when they're 10 years old, they decide that they want to be a politician, and they will carefully think about all the steps that they have to go through in order to reach that status. So, they'll say, let's say, I don't know, my father already is the head of a corporation. Maybe if I go to this university and then my father will recommend me for a position, then I will, I don't know, let's say, take over my father's company, and from there I will have a position of status and power, and then from there I will have the financial resources to launch myself in politics, etc., etc., and so on and so forth. And as far as career goes, they can be interested in a lot of different careers, anything that can bring them status. So their career goals can actually greatly vary based on the other chart placements. But Capricorn in itself, it will not really go for very flashy, gaudy sort of positions. They will not be the people who are interested in, I don't know, show business, for example, or, I don't know, being glamour models or something. They're generally very down-to-earth people. They're always thinking about concrete applications. So they're thinking, how can I contribute to the world? They'll be like, so they'll be attracted to things that are generally very challenging, because Capricorn, Mars in Capricorn really has the best ability to cope with challenges in life and in a job and in everything. They will not be daunted by any kind of challenges. Probably second best would be Mars in Scorpio, although it's debatable. But Mars in Capricorn really, unless it's afflicted, these people really take on challenges, even though they can be very pessimistic. You know, they can be like, Mars in Capricorn will be the people who, you know, they will get the job done, but they will always complain about how hard life is and how unfair everything is and how they hate their lives. And I've known a few people like that, you know, who were very good professionals, let's say, and they were always at work. They were always called up to deal with an emergency situation, and they would always complain. But then when the job was done, and of course the managers would praise them, they would be like, what would you do without me? You know, like, they would of course take pride in the fact that they are reliable employees and that people respect them and respect their abilities. So, but they can take positions, anything to do with Earth. For example, more traditionally or old-fashioned, you could say Mars in Capricorn would be interested in things like mining, or in a more refined fashion, depending on the chart, they could be interested in creating jewelry based on precious gemstones, or diamonds or stuff like that. Generally anything to do with rock, like, because Capricorn, Saturn actually governs rock. It governs bones. So again, it governs bones. So Mars in Capricorn can make a good dentist, for example, or I don't know, some kind of a doctor that deals in X-rays, anything to do with X-rays. I'm not very good at medicine, but I think you catch my drift. Like, anything to do with bones, or an archaeologist, of course, again, or I don't know, pathology, or medical examiner. What do you call them? Those, like you know, Dr. G. Those people who analyze corpses to determine the cause of death. That could be a Mars in Capricorn profession. I know this doesn't sound like a very optimistic profile, but pretty much, you know, Capricorns, you know, they really do not fantasize very much. They do not see the world through rose-colored glasses. They see the world the way it is. They look at reality and they accept reality, they accept their limitations, and they start by saying, this is the situation, what can I do now? What can I do within these physical limits? You know, they will never deny their physical limits, and they will, on the one hand, they will maybe never be like the daredevils that a Mars in Aries or Mars in Sagittarius can be, but on the other hand, they'll be the kind of people that, you know, slowly but surely are always approaching their goal. You know, one obstacle at a time, one setback at a time. They will never really give up, and eventually they reach their goals because they're just so determined. However, also because Capricorn, being ruled by Saturn, can represent delays and frustrations in life. Mars and Capricorn people will generally be the people who come up the hard way. You know, they go through a lot of challenges, both professionally and personally, until they finally reach their goal in life. as far as romance goes, again, like, Mars in Capricorn really is probably the most workaholic position of Mars. And so at first sight, you may think that these people seem very cold and very very cold and very pragmatic, especially women with Mars in Capricorn. They can really be, number one, they can always be attracted to older men because Saturn represents old people, old age, maturity, severity, sobriety, things like that. So women with Mars, I've actually noticed this, like women with Mars in Capricorn tend to always be attracted to older men. I think Lana del Rey has her Mars in Capricorn, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to check that. But I think you catch my drift. So they can, on the one hand, be attracted to older men. On the other hand, they can always be attracted to men who have a high status, because Capricorn represents status. So from the outside, they can come across as very materialistic, but the truth is that because they're very ambitious women, they always need a man that they can look up to. They will never settle for a guy who doesn't have any ambitions and doesn't stand a chance to improve his social status. Men with Mars in Capricorn, on the negative side, they can also be these kinds of men who look at romance as a way to improve their social status. So they can be the kind of men who go for, arm candy sort of girlfriends. So they will go for women who are good looking, tall, blonde, slim, beautiful, all that, simply because they know that this is what society will admire in a man, to have, a supermodel kind of girlfriend, and not because they're genuinely interested in a woman. And also, Capricorn is really a very traditionalist kind of energy. Actually, also Taurus and Virgo, but not so much. Like, Capricorn, more than all the other earth signs, they can be very traditionalist. So it could be very possible that a man who has like a lot of Capricorn energy, or specifically Mars in Capricorn, will not tolerate a woman who is like his equal, like intellectually and professionally and all that. So they can be interested in a woman who will be a homemaker, who will be willing to build her life around him and his ambitions, especially since the opposite of Capricorn is Cancer, which represents basically the, women Cancers are the prototypical housewives and stay-at-home mothers and all that. So, okay, that's all I can think about. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this and found it useful. And stay tuned, because I will come up with other videos to express Mars in air and Mars in water signs pretty soon, I'm hoping. So, thank you.